record and make it happen.
Perfect. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much to Andrew for being here and hosting this talk tonight. I know the holidays can be a source of stress for a lot of people. Of course, they're also a source of fun, and we really don't want nutrition or food or eating habits to be a source of stress during this time. And that's really what Andrew's here to break down today. This isn't one of those classic nutrition-y kind of talks where people will give you a healthier version of your favorite recipes. We want you to enjoy the holidays, enjoy all of those favorite recipes to their max. And Andrew's going to show us how to do exactly just that. So if you are not a client of Andrew's or my own, you may not know Andrew, but he is our CEO and founder. He is dietitian extraordinaire. So he's going to show us how it's done tonight and how to navigate the holidays in a healthy mindset and keeping our health and wellness front of mind while enjoying it. So Andrew, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. And just a reminder to everyone listening, please hit the mute button on your phone or computer so that if you have background noise, it's not interrupting what we're doing. And Devin, just a note for you, usually the mute will come up on your participant screen. I know I can't do that anymore, but thank you, Devin. I appreciate it. And as she echoed, and as I will kind of repeat, the stress of the season is something that I watched more and more. And I think as dietitians, we see more and more is that unfortunately a time of year that's meant to be a chance for us to slow down and come together and connect with people we care about has rapidly turned into a time of year where we seem and feel busier and we feel dragged and we feel pulled. At times it can be the most stressful time of year, and we go into the new year almost wanting to hibernate and run away from people and start fresh. And so one of the things that can contribute to that is our relationship with food. And when I say our relationship with food, I actually mean us as a society. We have developed a very warped perception of what food is and also what health is. Something that we've been talking about internally at Case Specific this week a lot is the definition of health and what healthy means. And what we've realized is that when a dietitian like Devin or myself says the word healthy, and when you hear that word healthy, the thing that comes to mind is not the same. And so it's to say that your perception of health and our perception of the word health are very different. And that's important when we're talking about trying to make sure everyone's on the same page. So I wanted to start by trying to shed a little light on what health really means. One of the things that drove me to start this private practice is my love for what's called the biopsychosocial model of care. Super technical, but it's the idea that our health comes from a variety of factors, including biologic factors, right? Our being, psychological factors, our mental state, sociologic factors, our connection to our environment. And those things all cross connect to create our health or detract from it if we're not careful. And so, something that we think about when we look at what a healthy holiday season looks like, it's kind of one of those expectation versus realities where I think people think a dietitian thinks of of a healthy holiday season as swapping out oil for applesauce in recipes and doing all sorts of caloric X, Y, and Z. And the reality is dietitians are actually more about relationship with food, relationship with self, relationship with others, finding balance amongst things, finding peace amongst things, setting your body, mind, and soul up so that they can actually navigate this crazy thing called life. And that's not always as easy, as the words I just said, but it's a genuine intention. And it's something that I'm hoping we can capture today. So this year, 2022, is a very important year. And it's because it is the 20th anniversary of the destruction of society as we know it. And what I mean by that is in 2002, a guy named David Zinczenko wrote an op-ed article in the New York Times called Eat This, Not That. And a couple years later, it became a book called Eat This, Not That. And it took the world by storm, ended up on Oprah's reading list, ended up being a bestseller, and unfortunately put us as a society into a state of eat this, not that. I will share that personally, I was in high school when the book got released, and I personally had a very obsessive relationship with food at that time. I was a cross country runner and I wanted to be fit, fast, fierce, and be shredded. And I thought that I had to obsess over my eating to do so. And the Eat This, Not That book was something that pushed me into an eating disorder. And so I spent a long time as a young person unpacking those obsessive behaviors, and hopefully I'm able to shed light on people of all sides of this sort of what we'll call relationship with food spectrum, whether you're someone that is overly restrictive and fearing of food, or whether you're somebody that might have a really emotionally complicated relationship with food, or a little bit of both, perhaps. It is to say that I personally have been there as well as professionally have dug into this, and it is to share with you that the book Eat This, Not That is one of the many examples of things within our society that have really warped our perception of what food is, what health is, and what eating healthy actually looks like. The concept of eat this, not that started what we like to call a food grading system, where we started to end up with kind of two lists of food: good foods and bad foods. Um, and most people didn't really understand the difference other than to try and correlate them to something that mattered. And our society pushed weight as something that mattered. And so it was good foods help you be thin, or bad foods don't do that. So we oversimplified, right? First, we started to obsess over calories and energy. And then fast forward, we start grading foods. We end up having foods listed as good and bad. And fast forward now 20 years later, most of us probably, if I say list some bad foods, will like automatically respond. And I bet the same 5 or 10 foods would exist on that list. It's to say that we've kind of come to an agreement as a society that somehow food is to blame, and that food is the thing that is good or bad. And so then we've started food substitutions, right? Ooh, eat this, not that. Eat this instead. Um, Now, the farmers that grow cauliflower, like, they absolutely love that because cauliflower is now the substitute for gnocchi and rice and pizza and macaroni and cheese and mashed potatoes. I don't know that I think it's a great sub for any of those things, but it's to say that we've started to live in a world where we almost fear enjoying our favorite things. And this becomes extremely highlighted during the holidays, a time of year when special occasions, when exceptions, when emotions, when nostalgia all come into play, in a more heightened and intense environment surrounded by familiar faces. Um, Food is a lot more complicated and a lot more present and a lot more relevant this time of year. And unfortunately, the eat this, not that culture really makes this an additional stress for a lot of people. Um, Compounded by something we'll dig into a little bit later, which would be the general excess of sort of everything we do, sort of the go big or go home mindset. Um, but I want to step back a little bit and kind of dig into this eat this, not that mindset that existed. Something that's really important to understand is that we made a huge mistake in the 90s and early 2000s of trying to help people, which that was not the mistake, right? That was a genuine intention. But we made the mistake of trying to help people by teaching them to focus on the what, not the how. Instead of teaching people how to eat, we tried to tell them what to eat. And why is that? One, people are stubborn. So that's one easy reason. That's a fast reason. Two, the how is a little bit more long-winded, right? It takes a 1 hour session like this as opposed to a bullet point list, which we can hear why social media and Twitter and all that stuff made eat this, not that even easier. But what's really interesting is if you investigate various cultures around the world, the ones that learn the how don't have the same health problems that we do. They actually may eat um, more variety than we do. They may enjoy some of their favorite foods more frequently. They may consume more alcohol, right? There may be by measures, we would look at it because of our what mindset and we go, but they eat so badly. Red flag, right? Wait, they eat badly, yet there is no consequence to that. Maybe it's not as bad as we thought. Why is that? Unfortunately, our society focused on criticizing the what, not the how. One of my favorite things to say is only in America can we work 80 hours a week and have children and extracurriculars and all these things going on so that we are sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, plugged into phones and emails 24/7, always stretched thin on our grind, never stressed. God forbid we say we're stressed, And then on Friday night, we order a pizza because we're too tired to function and eat the entire box. And then we blame the pizza for our health problems. That's the American dream. I sure hope not. And I hope that we can fix that. So, what's this what versus how situation? I'll give you a few examples. If I was going to guess, most people, the thought of ice cream or cookies or pastries or chips or candy, we'll just start with that list. Would probably be foods that most people would categorize as bad. And so let's excavate that a little bit. What's bad about them, right? Why did they get this reputation as bad? And what's interesting is, if you dig back into the eat this, not that culture, they were listed as bad because they were high in calories. And so calorically dense became bad. Now, caloric density isn't inherently bad. I mean, a lot of us, right? All of us actually need calories. Just for me to sit in this room, right? My body temperature at 98.6 degrees. I'm sitting in a room that's 68 degrees. I'm producing 30 degrees of heat every second of every day. That is my caloric output. So for me to exist, heart beating, brain thinking, nerves functioning, talking as fast as I'm currently talking, thinking as fast as I'm currently thinking, requires energy. And where I source that energy from isn't particularly important from a burn perspective. So let's dig a little deeper. Calorie density isn't necessarily the problem. But let's think about the role of certain foods, right? So if we are saying that certain things are calorically dense and certain things aren't, that means that certain things will give us more energy in smaller portions than other things. Um, One of the factors there would be, okay, well, how does appetite play a role in this? And so what we can look at is we can realize that something like chips or cookies or candy or cakes or those types of foods, one of the things they all have in common is they're not particularly filling, right? They don't make us feel full. Well, there's a reason for that. The things that make us feel full are protein and fiber, right? A complete meal or a balanced diet is composed of a variety of different ingredients, right? Carbohydrates and fats are the energy part of our meal. And so foods that are very high in carbohydrates and fats tend to taste the best. They're like gas in the gas tank. And that's going to be your ice cream. That's going to be your pizza. That's going to be your pasta, right? We can start to see that all these foods that we tend to put on the bad list are really just calorically dense. Why are they calorically dense? Lots of carbs, lots of fats. Protein and fiber tends to be the thing that slows down digestion and drives satisfaction. And so we think about protein, that's going to be our animal protein sources, our vegetarian protein sources, our tofu, our chicken, our fish, those types of things. Um, Fiber comes mostly from fruits and vegetables and really, really good, complete whole grains. And so, see, there's some of our more slow digesting foods. And so we tend to think grilled chicken salad. And what our eat this, not that culture did is kind of made the overcorrection of, hey, instead of eating a box of mac and cheese, carbs and fats, eat a grilled chicken salad, protein and fiber. The downside is carbs and fats, one, are what tastes good. And two, they're what actually give us energy. They are the firewood that actually gives us a fire that most of us would call our metabolism. And so as our culture started to create these two lists, we started to create this yo-yo diet culture, right? Of I'm either enjoying the things I like to eat because I'm a human being, or I'm telling myself I'm eating healthy by eating the foods that make me feel full, but don't ever let me feel satisfied or enjoy what I'm eating. So eventually I can't hold my breath any longer and I go back to being a human being. And the pendulum swings back and forth. Society tells me this is what I'm supposed to do. So every time I do this, I feel like I'm a terrible human being, which sets me up to start what we call the GER cycle, which the last talk I did was on the GER cycle. GER, the acronym, is restrict food, resent the restriction, rebel against the restriction, right? Which is to say, usually binge of some kind, then regret the rebellion, and then restrict again. And it becomes this vicious cycle where we have this guilt and shame about foods that we've been told are bad, but have never really taken the time to truly dig into one, why that could be true, and also what that might actually be trying to communicate. And so now we live in this world where we're either eating the things we enjoy and energize us, but we're not eating them with the protein and fiber that regulates our appetite and tells us what's adequate. Or we're not eating those things. We're eating carbohydrate, or we're eating protein and fiber, which sets us up to feel full, but drains our energy levels, crashes our metabolism. Um, and the way I can prove that to you is that every single person in this talk probably knows one person that, one, yo-yo diets violently back and forth between the two, right? But two, gets into the healthy side of things and is low energy, miserable, and eventually, if they're trying to lose weight, stops losing weight and feels stuck and feels like they hit a plateau. And it's because their fire just went out because they stopped putting wood on it. Um, you also probably know somebody that always says, I know what to do, I just have to do it. And most people that say they know what to do are talking about shifting aggressively over to an overcorrected, pendulum. Um, that's not actually what you're supposed to do. Our society told us what to eat, not how to eat. That's what that looks like. The reality is, proteins and fibers are meant to be the things that slow our digestive process. Carbs and fats are meant to be what energize and fuel our body to exist and to thrive, not just survive. And they're meant to coexist with each other as a time release, as a slow release of energy into the body, as a delivery of nutrients, so that we can experience all things in a balanced state. A way I like to think about it is, instead of eating a box of mac and cheese or a grilled chicken salad, ideally you would have a grilled chicken salad and have some mac and cheese on the side. Um, Most of the foods that end up on the bad list are the calorically dense things that people will say, oh yeah, I just can't keep that in the house because if I do, I overeat it or I eat all of it. And once again, what I would note is, let's look at the how there. Most of these foods are actually meant to be parts of a meal. Our society is one of the few that doesn't prioritize main meals. We prioritize snacking. And by that, I mean, we actually prioritize everything else but food and self care, right? We prioritize the meetings, the events, the things, the work, the job, the money, whatever. We prioritize all those things to the detriment of our self care. And so we skip our breakfast because we don't have an appetite in the morning, probably because we're too stressed and too busy to let our body slow down enough to eat something. And then because we don't really think about food because we're not hungry in the morning, we don't prioritize planning or identifying what lunch is until our energy crashes somewhere between 12 and 2, in which case we grab something nearby as conveniently as we can get. Probably not a full meal because we don't have the time to actually sit and eat something, or once again, we haven't made that time. So we find ourselves grabbing something small, catching where catch can, and we wonder why our appetite's all over the place, our energy is through the floor. We have a very incomplete digestive process. We don't do a good job of taking foods and pairing them together. And so in our society, I like to tell people that most snacks are actually side dishes, right? Things like chips, they're not really meant to be a snack. They're not meant to be the thing you grab from one meeting to the next. Doesn't mean you can't do that on occasion as a tool in your toolbox, but that's not really what their purpose is. They're meant to be next to a turkey wrap with an apple and some carrots, right? It's meant to be the crunchy, salty, tasty, fun thing that makes a meal way more enjoyable and delivers that good hit of energy next to those things that deliver a good feeling of satiety and make a complete meal, which makes a complete digestive process, which boosts your mood, regulates everything about yourself, including inflammation and energy levels. We don't focus on the how enough. We focus too much on the what. Most snacks should be side dishes. Most sweets should be desserts. And we've talked about this in other group meetings, but the word dessert is rooted from the French word desservir. Desservir means to clear the table. Dessert is meant to be the thing that ends a meal. And if you want to get really nerdy with me, we have a bunch of different tastes that we like, right? Sweet, salty, savory, creamy, spicy. I'm missing one of them, sour, and then there's one more. But regardless, it's to say when you get all of them, you get this cool concept called umami, which the easiest way I can describe it is it's an explosion of dopamine and happiness in the brain. Sweet is the thing that's supposed to top that off and be that final firework. And so in an ideal world, you would sit down, you would eat a meal, that has some salty, savory, creamy, spicy, sour flavors. And then you would finish that meal with something sweet. And all it would do is that sweet would blend with all those other things at the end of the meal on your tongue, and it would go and be really delicious and amazing. Most people in the United States get so full from dinner, partially because they probably underate at breakfast and skimped on lunch and grazed throughout the day to make themselves hungrier, that they eat this giant pile and then blame themselves or give themselves a guilt trip or have all sorts of shame. So then they save room for dessert by waiting 2 or 3 hours and eating it later, which doesn't give you the effect. So you end up just like eating a massive amount of dessert. Again, it's the how, not the what. What's kind of fun, the other thing I'll note is dessert is an example that not only is it something that's meant to be paired with the other foods to taste delicious, and kind of finish that. When you do that, your tongue doesn't need near as much of it. So you end up eating less of it naturally because it's there to finish a job that's already been mostly accomplished. And the coolest part is dessert is actually designed to be for your tongue, not your stomach, which is just to say that when you eat it, you should be trying to see how long you can keep it in your mouth. Like chocolate, for example. Did you know that Dove chocolate squares, they spend like millions of dollars in R&D on mouthfeel? They perfect the texture when it's in your mouth. It's supposed to melt on your tongue. And when it does, you actually get the full effect of the chocolate. And when you sit a piece of chocolate on your tongue, try and hold it there for a minute, just for fun. Put a timer, do this tonight or do this tomorrow. Put a little Dove square on your tongue, put it for a minute and just suck on it. And what you'll find is the amount of flavor you get out of one piece of chocolate completely overwhelms your tongue to the point that you won't want more. But we're so busy forcing it down past the tongue, not using it how it's supposed to be used, that the amount of chocolate it takes for our tongue to feel satisfied is 3, 5, 10 times. Unfortunately, again, our society focused on the what. Don't eat that because it causes this, as opposed to slowing down and saying, no, actually, all of these foods fit. All of these foods are a part of a very healthy experience, right? If we slow down enough to sit down and enjoy a meal, and that meal has good fibers and proteins to slow down digestion, good carbohydrates and fats to energize the brain, energize the body, energize and tantalize the palate, and then a dessert that's meant to finish it off, to clear the table, if you will, we're going to walk away from that experience full, satisfied both physically and emotionally, which that's a win. We're going to have all sorts of good brain chemicals buzzing around our body, which is also a good thing. And we'll also have dropped our stress levels massively because instead of being so focused on that email in your inbox or that next meeting or karate at 6:30 or soccer at 7 or wrestling practice or this or that or the other thing, you'll actually have spent 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes being present in the moment. I did a post a couple months ago, and this is something I do my Thoughtful Thursdays on my Instagram channel. If any of you would like to follow me, it's Pittsburgh Guyetician. And my Thoughtful Thursdays are more for me than for everybody else, to be perfectly honest. I tend to find little thoughts that resonate with me and are a part of my personal growth and health journey because we're all on our own journey trying to improve ourselves and better connect in this crazy thing called life. And one of my favorite ones was that if you're feeling depressed, you're probably living in the past. If you're feeling anxious, you're probably living in the future. And the only way to feel peace is to live in the present. Meals are meant to be present, right? We're supposed to ideally pause 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, to slow down and actually be present. And that is a very, very simple but extremely difficult task in a society that has completely abandoned that in an attempt to get more hours in, to get more work in. I'm going to pause real quick. Please make sure you're muted. We've got a couple with some background feed. So just take a moment and look and see if you're muted. Make sure your little red microphone is on for me. Thank you. It's blowing up my ears and making me all twitchy. So so I want to take pause there, right? So first of all, we can blame David Zinczenko for his eat this, not that BS that I know personally affected me 20 years ago. Happy birthday to him. that has been one of many things that has led to food grading, food shaming, good and bad, and everything that's come from that. Food substitution, food fearing, the guilt and shame cycle that now has plagued most of you in here, probably have felt the experience of wanting to care about your health, thinking that your health means only eating certain things, and then having a social event with people that you love or haven't seen in a long time that you're dreading because of the food. And if that hits for you, this is a chance to really dig in and try and reframe this, right? We've gotten so focused on the what of our eating, not the how, that we now have fear and anxiety around social events that are meant to cause us sanity or give us peace or give us a chance to feel rejuvenated. And now they actually have caused more stress. And so food stress has become this underlying issue in a lot of things that would be otherwise not just non-stressful, but actually a source of de-stressing. If we slow down and try and focus more on how we're eating, being more intentional about it, right? Slowing down around meals, allowing things to pair and combine properly, allowing the aspects of meals to actually coexist properly. We have a much more positive experience, first of all, but we also get to feel satisfaction and fullness and get to actually connect with health on a physical and a mental level. Um, that is a really, really big piece of tonight's talk. And so I want to take a pause there, because I think that the concept of focusing on the how is something that I would challenge each of you to take some time and think about, not only as we talk about holidays in this next piece, but also just in your day to day and your week to week. Take a look at what your tendencies are in terms of your flow, right? Look at your stress levels, look at your weekly routine, right? Are there patterns that show you that you're getting burnt out, or that you're skimping on meals, or that you're deprioritizing self? What can we do to slow down and use these things to your advantage? And I'll encourage all of you, most of you may already be working with a dietitian within our group. But this is the type of stuff that we actually like to do. And this is the stuff that we're actually trained in doing. This is what dietitians are good at. We are really good at the how. And so let us help you figure out your how, as opposed to obsessing over your what. If you message us and say, "Can I have a cookie at the wedding on Saturday night?" We're going to say, "Yeah, but like, why are you asking that?" And there's a whole lot of more information that we need to have a good conversation about this, right? We went to school for 6 to 8 years as medical specialists, not because we want to give you a sticker for holding your breath and avoiding your favorite things, not because we're good at being the food police and slapping your wrist, but because we're really, really good at integrating food into your emotional, social, and personal biopsychosocial model of care, your complete picture of health, if you will. So when I wish someone a healthy holiday season, I'm not telling them that I hope they're eating pumpkin loaf that was made with applesauce instead of oil. I'm telling that I hope that they actually are able to stay present and enjoy the time that they're spending with friends, family, and loved ones, take time away from work, prioritize things that matter to them in their life, enjoy favorite foods, slow down and be present in meals, slow down and be present in moments, and actually really connect with what it means to be alive in the first place. I don't have time to quote the Dalai Lama, but it's to say that there's a really good Dalai Lama quote out there about the curiosity of man, and how we have a tendency to delay our needs and our health until it's too late, essentially. Um, Thank you. I appreciate that, Yafa. um, so what I want to do is I want to switch gears a little bit, because I kind of started it with more of a big picture thing, which is one, trying to kill, eat this, not that culture, but also with more of a framework. And so hopefully something that, instead of giving you a fish, can teach you to fish, not just this holiday season, but in general, is always turning your attention to how you're eating it. So the next time you find yourself, arms deep in the cookie jar and you wake up and go, "What just happened? Where am I?" Instead of slapping your wrist and criticizing yourself, instead of blaming the cookies, maybe sit down or sit back and look at what got you there. What level of burnout are you at? How hard are you grinding? How well have you been doing at like prioritizing meals and supporting yourself and nourishing yourself? Because all food should be a part of a self-care plan. And usually, Usually if we're doing something in excess or we're doing something from an intensely emotional place, that's usually a call for help in some way. Um, and food is often one of the most accessible and easy to source vehicles, and it's also socially approved of, right? Most people don't want to chain smoke cigarettes or do drugs or other things, and so it's like, oh yeah, we'll just like mindlessly snack until we're blue in the face. Food is supposed to be a part of self-care, but that's not a way to do it. I had a client one time that said, it's funny, I explained this and they go, it's kind of like opiates and like the pain management drugs. And I was like, what do you mean? They were like, well, like if you use it as a part of a pain management program, like oxycodone, right? It's a really good pain manager. But if you're just like out there popping oxys for fun, it's a problem. And I was like, actually, yeah, very much so. It is very much that. Food is meant to be a part of a self-care plan. And by food, I mean all food. I don't mean to eat this foods. I don't mean the good foods. I mean all the foods. But it all goes back to how you're using them. Right? There's a big difference between having a couple Oreos as a part of a meal, as that sweet finisher at the end of a meal, versus getting home starved and mentally beaten from the day and eating an entire sleeve of them while you zone out to the news worrying about what's going on in the world. So, all moments to take pause. As we get into the holiday season, I'm hoping what I can do next is maybe help address some of the what we'll call overwhelm, because this is a time of year where there's just a lot going on. I will share openly that my birthday is December 9th. Cards and money are all accepted. I can send my address if you'd like. But I also like Amazon gift cards, side note. But anyway, I digress. I have been, since I was a kid, a part of a family who has a dad. His birthday is December 5th. So it was always like Thanksgiving, and then my dad's birthday, and then my birthday. And then I came from a divorced household. So then it was the weekend before Christmas was always my dad's side's Christmas. And then I had actual Christmas. And so it was literally just something every weekend. And that means a party every weekend. And obviously now I'm an adult. And so that means that there's holiday parties and there's friend groups and there's social this and social that and cookie baking and pie offs and all the good things. And so something that I know to be true for everybody is that this holiday season tends to be a whole lot of things going on, and it can feel hard to slow down in that. And so there's a couple of perspectives I like to prioritize. The first thing that I will encourage everybody to do is to prioritize their highlight reel. And it's my all-time favorite. I've been giving this is one of my oldest tips. It hasn't evolved over the years. It's just as boring but effective as it was a long time ago. The highlight reel is a really fun mindset. So in July, when you're kicked back on a beach somewhere and you talk to your friends or family about your holiday tradition, there are probably a couple key things that you're excited about. So for me personally, um, my great grandmother's pumpkin pie recipe, and Devin's heard this about 36,000 times, so she could probably just say mine for me, but it's to say,
Love the
hey,
pumpkin pie. I had it for the first time last year and I'm still thinking about it. That's one of my highlight
it's
reels.
there we go. Great grandmother's recipe. If you're going to get me to bake, that is the only time of year I bake. That is one of my highlight reel items. I know that that is coming. It is something that I look forward to, period, end of story. I don't care what time of year it is. My brain knows that's coming. My birthday, my grandmother also makes a homemade red velvet cake for me, which has been something I've had since I was a kid. Big fan. Yes, Anna, it's that serious. Um, and then around Christmas time, my wife's mom makes peanut butter blossom cookies. And so for me, I know going into the holiday season that I am excited for pumpkin pie, red velvet cake, and peanut butter blossom cookies. The reason that is so helpful is one, I am identifying the foods that mean a lot to me emotionally. They're things I look forward to. There are things that if I didn't get them, I would actually like resent that. Wait a second, these are important to me. I like these. These are a part of my overall life experience, right? It also allows me to gain clarity on what I actually want. And the reason that's so valuable is because you're about to walk into offices that have Eaton Park trays and Ferris candy dishes and candy apples and random pies from Giant Eagle. And who God knows what else, right? And so if you're somebody that sits down with me and I say, "What are you looking forward to this holiday season?" And you just go, "Cookies." Well, I hate to tell you, you're going to see a cookie every day for the next 45 days. And if your mind doesn't have any clarity on that, you're probably going to just go, "Cookie." And very human of you, you're going to eat the cookie. This is the thing. No problem with eating a cookie. Personally, I'm somebody that if I eat a crap ton of sugar every day, my brain starts to crash. I start to get low blood sugar. I start to get shaky. It's not how I want to live my day to day. And so, what I would note there is there's a big difference between saying I like cookies over the holidays versus saying I really like these cookies specifically, right? So, what are your favorite cookies? If you know you have your favorite desserts coming, it makes it easier to decide if something else is actually exciting to you. You're allowed to say yes to other things. It's not like we're sitting here saying this is all you're allowed to have. This isn't meant to be rules to hold a gun to your head. What we're saying here is this is a chance to identify things that you're excited about. So then you can compare other excitements to that level of excitement, something that you know to be truly valuable, to be truly worthwhile. I'm probably going to pass on the Eaton Park Smiley cookie. Like it's just going to be a no for me, dog. And like that may be different for another person, but that's the clarity we get to have. We're allowed to say yes and no to things, but we tend to go into the holiday season with kind of this just like accepted mindset of excess as opposed to truly putting favorite foods on a pedestal where they belong and letting that be a part of an overall fun experience. And so I would challenge each of you to take a moment and think about the next 6 weeks, maybe not right now, but tonight, and identify what are the favorite parties, what are the favorite events, what are the favorite social occasions, what are the things you know are coming that have a food in them that you are super freaking amped for. And you'd be excited for it today. You'd be excited for it the day it happens. You'd be excited for it in July when you were on the beach. And if you didn't get it in February, you'd look back and go, man, I didn't get that this year. I really missed that. Make that list. Get clear in what you're super excited about so that you can make sure you hit those, right? Make sure you tag those bases. But also, it gives you a reference, it gives you some level of variability. It establishes almost a rating scale, right? Not of good and bad, but of favorite things to random odds and ends. The other thing I'll note, and it kind of pairs with this a little bit, is what I like to call the holiday mindset. DAY is capitalized. We've kind of gotten into this scenario where like Thanksgiving this year, I think, is November 24th. And that means that if you celebrate Christmas, there are 30 days between Thanksgiving and Christmas that are just days. They're just days. They just exist. Some of them might have Christmas parties, right? Some might have that fun cookie baking with your grandma or aunt or niece or nephew or granddaughter, right? Whoever's in the audience. Um, there's going to be the different family dinners and things. And so let's just say for fun in that 30 days that like 8 of those days are truly holidays, special occasions. That means there's still 22 days that are just a day, chance to eat a bagel at breakfast and have a wrap for lunch and, salad with some pita chips on it for dinner, whatever it is, right? Days that we can just have food. It's worth noting that there's allowed to be exceptions. And we live in this society where we try and diet hard and we try and focus on I hit X calories for X days. We like to take streaks and we like to focus on perfection. We somehow get overly focused on the wrong thing again. We've got to realize that learning to be healthy is actually learning to balance the ebbs and flows that surround us. Um, and it's something to think about. I like to remind people that struggle with this exception mindset. This is actually what we'd call moderation. Step one is get clear on the exceptions, right? What are the exceptions? Where are they? When are they going to be? Identify them. Get excited about them instead of dreading them. Get excited about them because if you dread them, guilt and shame is going to take over and it's going to create behaviors that are really, really emotional. Instead, get excited about them and let them be. But the other part is recognize that the best teams in any sport are always defeated when they win a championship, right? The last time a national championship winning team won the World Series, Super Bowl, Stanley Cup while also being completely undefeated was 1972 Miami Dolphins. Since then, Every national champion has lost at least one, if not two, if not 10 games throughout the course of their season, which is to say that champions always have imperfections, right? And so perfection is an illusion. It really goes back to embracing and what you assign meaning to in your exceptions. And where this becomes important is Thanksgiving, for example. I'm going to be completely honest. I eat a giant pile of food on Thanksgiving. And it's really fun. It's a good time. And by the way, zero guilt and shame about it. It's just people are surprised by it because I'm a dietitian. Oh my gosh, how could you, right? That's our societal kind of shame, right? Um, but what's really fun is noting that then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I eat leftovers, but I don't eat them as giant piles of food that make me feel sick, right? Instead, leftovers become just meals. It's kind of funny when you realize that turkey and mashed potatoes and green beans looks a whole lot like chicken, rice, and broccoli. Um, Turkey and stuffing and greens can look a whole lot like sweet potatoes and green beans and some sort of pork tenderloin. It's just food. It's meals. And so having that one big fun meal, I don't love being stuffed all the time, so I have no desire to continuously be stuffed. But I don't assign any meaning to one, that enjoyed moment where I stay present and I'm with friends and family and eating special things. But I also don't let that factor in or affect what I do the next day. We have a tendency to think that trends and patterns have meaning. And so it's this idea of, oh, I've been doing so good, aka I've been starving myself and omitting my favorite things in an excessive way. And now I had my Thanksgiving dinner, and so I'm just gonna go nuts and say screw it. Right. We tend to treat this like it's this perfectionist game. And that is going to guarantee some sort of variable or volatile relationship with food. All foods are meant to fit and coexist. Focusing on how we're eating is going to always win over obsessing over what's being eaten. Um, and during this holiday season, focusing on your highlight reel, identifying the days that actually are the exceptions that you're looking forward to, can set you up to gain clarity in the things that are meant to be good. So, one, you're not nervous about them or stressed or putting undue pressure on yourself to survive them. Because why are we trying to survive good things? We should be thriving during good things. But it's also to say that it'll provide additional clarity on the days that aren't that, right? The Tuesday that you're just going to like go to work like any other month, any other day, and you can pack your lunch like you do or like you'd like to. We're allowed to gain clarity of what the landscape around us looks like. And sometimes that projection can give us peace in a time where we tend to feel like we're being dragged left and right and pulled all these different directions. There's a really real opportunity here to try and gain some clarity of the terrain that's ahead, feel like we have a little bit of certainty or a little bit of say in it, and gain some feelings of empowerment from that. The last thing I'm going to leave you with, and then I'm going to open it up to questions, and it's just kind of a note that I think a lot of people need to hear. We are currently in a society where, unfortunately, there is massive food excess alongside a very poor ability to redistribute that excess. And what I mean by that is you can't donate your leftovers to a food bank because unfortunately we can't trust that people wouldn't do something to the food and negatively affect people, right? We struggle to be able to take the excess that is in our day-to-day lives and give it to the people that would really benefit from it. But we also simultaneously live in a society where when you buy a box of cake mix, it makes a cake. And it's not because if, say Devin decides to bake me a cake, just as an example, this is a fun one. If Devin bakes me a cake for my birthday on December 9th, red velvet cake, if she does that and she gives it to me, do I think that she expects me to eat the entire cake? Was the point of the gift the entirety of the cake? No, it was a gesture of doing something for another human. It was the gesture of a delicious treat, most likely of which I will enjoy a sizable piece of. But what do you do with the rest of the cake becomes the question. And here's a fun thought. She paid $5.99 for a Betty Crocker red velvet cake mix, and it made 12 12 pieces of cake. If she had gone to Giant Eagle and bought me a slice of their cake, it would have been $4.99. And so the rest of the cake, the other 11 pieces that I didn't eat, worth about $2. Um, I can't mail it to starving people in other countries. I can't donate it to the food pantry. So, like, my options are either find a homeless person, throw it away, or eat it myself. I will honestly, personally, always try and find a homeless person because I think that's actually a really good attempt at allocation of food excess. Can't always take place though. Um, Eating it myself is still in my mind wasteful unless I'm really excited to eat it. I will eat a second piece of cake if I'm excited to do so, but at some point I'm going to get to that cake and go, I'm kind of done with this cake. And there's the guilt of, oh, but like Devin made it for me. I don't want to like throw it away, even though she didn't make it for me, thinking I was going to force 12 pieces of cake down my throat in 2 days. Um, oh, she went through all that time. Or, oh, but it's there's the money component. Well, it's $2. And so like we're really not losing a whole lot of sleep over that, I don't think. But my favorite thing to think about is what ends up happening is most of us end up eating the cake begrudgingly, which, like, the whole point of eating a dessert is to enjoy it. And if you're sitting there pissed off that you're eating cake, that doesn't sound like that was the point of her gift. That also doesn't sound like it was the right way to dispose of it, because now it's affecting your mental and probably your physical health. Because I'll tell you this, if you mentally don't want to eat the cake, you probably physically don't want the cake either. Um, and so recognize that cookies are sold in boxes that make sets of 24. Cake is made in boxes that sell sets of 12. Most people bake that because it's harder to bake a piece of cake than it is to bake a cake. It's harder to bake a cookie than it is to bake 2 dozen. Um, and so the whole point is to enjoy the amount that you can enjoy or would like to enjoy. If you can't find a homeless person to donate it to, don't feel guilty about tossing it, because ultimately you forcing it down your throat is not better than the trash can. And you feeling stuffed and low energy and blood sugar crashed is not really helping hungry people anywhere in the world. Honestly, it's just giving you a bad relationship with food and making you feel bitter around the holidays. And the reality is, most of us are going to end up with a few dozen cookies, multiple cakes, pies, pastries. We're going to have them at our offices. We're going to have them at our houses. We're going to have them at family members' houses. There's plenty of time to say yes, but don't be afraid to say no. And notice both of them are an option. Some people are going to feel like they're supposed to say no all the time. Don't be afraid to say yes, especially to the highlight reels that matter most. Um, so that's just something to think about. And I will end that with just one comment. We just finished Halloween. If any of you are still begrudgingly passing around Halloween candy, it's time to toss it. I had a conversation with a lady the other day where we kind of laughed about this observation. And I said, I feel like we should all just like donate $50 to Hershey and Mars every year. Because what happens is kids now go out and they get 250 pieces of candy. We let them eat like 10 to 15 of them, which is like a piece or two a day for 2 weeks. And then the other 220 end up hidden somewhere in the house, munched on randomly. And then eventually they end up like at work or they go to school with the kid. And then I get to sit in my office and Devin gets to sit in her office, and we get to hear teachers complain about it, coworkers complain about it, and parents complain about it. Which is to say, like, if you're going to eat the Hershey Kiss and it's an enjoyable part of your day, perfect. That's what it's for. But if we're going to sit here and collectively as a society complain about a good thing over and over and over again and not do anything about it, just throw it away. No one wants it. Your teacher doesn't want it. Your coworker doesn't want it. They're complaining about it too. We're about to enter a time of year where there is more chocolate and cookies and cakes and pastries than any human could ever consume. Get picky, right? I've always said, for me, when I go to a buffet, I don't go and like slop on the mac and cheese and all the cheap stuff. I go and I look for the crab legs. I go look for the steak. I look for the expensive stuff. Get picky. Focus on the right things. Focus on your highlights, the things that you really want. Get excited about what's for you. and allow this season to be a time where you get to say yes to wonderful things. You get to slow down and take pause in wonderful moments. And then you happily and without any sort of sense of guilt, shame, or social obligation, say no or pass on things that aren't for you. Boom, 8 o'clock. Did it time to the hour like I tried.
So, moral of the story is that I need to bake you a red velvet cake.
I'm happy you were listening. That was a very important. That's actually that point right there on this little note of mine was Devin needs to bake red velvet cake. My grandmother can't really bake it anymore, and so I'll have her send you the recipe. And as if you didn't have enough to do already.
I'll do anything for I sign my checks.
I was going to say it'll go into your performance. It'll go into your performance review at the end of the year. Questions? Anybody? Thank you guys for sticking with me through this. I hope it was fun and interesting to listen to. Again, it's been recorded, and so this will end up getting paused here in a bit. We usually leave it open for the questions because we like to get those on record as well. But it's to say I appreciate you guys hanging out. I hope it was a good talk and good framework, thinking about the how instead of the what, and how our societal attempts to help people has actually kind of created a whole lot of chaos that we're hoping to unpack. And then I hope you have some fun tips that allow this holiday season to maybe be a little bit more for you, and a little bit less for Betty Crocker.
While questions are rolling in, I had a really great conversation with the food psychologist yesterday, and psychiatrist actually. And she was saying, I was talking to her about some of my nutrition philosophies, how, a balanced meal should have the 4 things. It should have carbs, fats, protein, and produce. And she said, I would actually add 2 things to that. And I was thinking about that while you're talking. She said, I would add pleasure and satisfaction, because you can feel pleasure without feeling satisfied. You can feel like one or the opposite. So really, like, not only do you need those nutritional components, but meals should also feel satisfying, and they should also be enjoyable. And I think that's kind of exactly what you've been saying this entire time. Thank you.
I like it. Yeah, no, that's a really good way of, so I've always said it as meals should be physically, mentally, and emotionally satisfying, right? The big 3. The physical is the carbs, fat, protein, fiber. The mental and emotional is the pleasure and the satisfaction, technically. But I like the words pleasure and satisfaction. I think that those probably speak to people a whole lot more than mine. Mine's more technical. And so I really like that. Thank you for sharing it. We've got questions rolling through it all. And
I'm going to sift through some of them.
I know the chat, I see it's at 35. Oh, I guess I can click it and look at the chat myself. If anyone feels bold enough to come off mute and wants to ask a question, we can try and create that dumpster fire. But obviously, messaging it sometimes a little bit easier.
One thing I can experience often as like the single person with no kids that has to travel for the holidays is that you're staying over at parents, grandparents' houses. You don't necessarily have control over what's in the house. So kind of resort to whatever's around, and it's not always what I would consider to be the most balanced or satisfying for me. So how would you handle that? Asking for
So say that. So I was going to say, so say it again. You're in a household that you don't have access, or you don't have as much say, you said.
Not like I go to Thanksgiving and then go home at the end of the day and can restart my normal diet the next morning because I'm out of my element, staying with family for the holidays.
Yeah, that's a big one. Like you said, people feel like they get disconnected from their routine. I think it's important to recognize that different routines serve us in different ways. And so I like to talk to people about the idea of the routine you just referenced for you, Devin. I would call it your Pittsburgh routine. Right. And so it's to say that that's what you do when you're in Pittsburgh. If you're not in Pittsburgh, stop thinking about doing that. You got to create a new routine. We are creatures of habit. Routines are just an attempt at feeling controlled. And sometimes we realize that a routine doesn't need to be this obsessively rigid, overly detailed path, right? Sometimes it can just be like a rough sketch. And so it's an idea of, it might be an identification of like, okay, well, when I'm with my family, we tend to really do really fun dinners together. And they tend to be like earlier, longer dinners, just as an example. So step 1, identify some of the sort of standout components of the environment you're in. And from there go, okay, well, also when I'm at home, I tend to like not have an alarm, and they left those blackout curtains in my bedroom. So I tend to sleep in a bit more. And so like I don't get up until like 9 or so. And I like to go down and I like to sip coffee with my mom and walk on the beach. And so like, I don't know, maybe I'm kind of more of like a brunch snack dinner girl when I'm at home. And so now all of a sudden you've created what we'll call a tentative flow. And you don't have to put a gun to your head and hold yourself to it. But it's if you have an idea of the path you may walk, if you project it a little bit, you will feel like you're doing it with intention. And so I would always identify first the things that stand out to you about the environment you're in, whether it be a dinner routine or a sleep routine, or a food access tendency. Identify that and let yourself put it on the map and just see if you can establish a food flow, because that's all a routine is, right? It's a flow that we know that works, so that when we're hustling and bustling in our busy lives, our subconscious can go boot, right? It can black turtleneck it, as Steve Jobs always did, right? He wore the same turtleneck every day. I'm calling you out. um, he wore the same black turtleneck every day because he said he didn't have time to waste his creativity on fashion. He made the same thing there so that he could unlock his mind to other things. Our subconscious does the same thing. We look for routines, so it's one less thing to have to make a decision about while we're making too many decisions. It's a way to prevent decision fatigue. If you're at someone's house or you're in an unfamiliar place, identify a potential flow. Give yourself a chance. And if you're at a hotel, it can be an identification of, you know what? I'm going to eat the breakfast at the hotel. Oh, it's done by 10, which means I need to get it in. Or, you know what? I'm not going to eat breakfast at the hotel. I'm going to get up and do this and this, and I'm going to grab Starbucks. If you start to give yourself some potential anchor points or reference points, right? If you're giving someone directions, you say at that gas station, make a left. Start giving yourself gas stations, shopping malls, and street signs. You'll find that you find a way to flow through it, and it'll feel like each one of those things is intentional. And so the concept there is really what we'll call projecting, instead of trying to just live in the moment and react, right? Oh my gosh, it's 12. What's for lunch? That is stressful. It's uncertain. You're not going to feel good about that as a human being. That's just like a very much against who we are and how we survive. If you look at the next day, glance at it and go, oh yeah, we got dinner plans with so and so at this time. I was going to go do this at this time. Yeah, I'll just wake up, have some coffee, do this, grab this, do this. It gives you a little bit of a plan, and we don't have to like beat ourselves up if it ends up deviating. If we gain clarity along our path and decide to take the road less traveled, Robert Frost style, so be it. But at least we have that plan. Gives us a sense of, okay, I'm going to be okay, right? There is a way to navigate this. But those projections should always be an attention of how can I support myself in a positive way. It shouldn't be sort of this like, fear mongered, like I have to do this or else. It's a, yeah, how can I set it up so while I'm here, I'm thriving?
Amazing. Kelvin made a good point. He said sometimes this is tough when you're the only person in the family on this journey. Support feels non-existent. Totally relate to this, Kelvin, because I don't always have that support. So one of my first things when I get home is I know I need to stock up on protein and produce. The first opportunity I have to swing by a grocery store, I will do that. And I kind of just have my own separate part of the fridge. I'm that annoying person. And I always bring my running shoes. So when everyone is kind of just like lazing about the day after Thanksgiving and just munching on leftovers, grazing through the entire day, I go out and I get a 10-mile run in and I don't talk to anybody for 2 hours, and it's amazing. So that's my routine of keeping myself mentally sane during the holidays, staying with family. That is hard when the support is.
Yeah. What I want to call out there real quick to everyone that hates her for running 10 miles, is Devin does that because she loves it. Did you notice her relationship with that thing, right? Where she said, I get away from everyone for 2 hours. I get to be alone with my thoughts. Like, do you notice that this is like a fun thing for her? And so, whether it's exercise, whether it's you getting to go play a game or going and playing solitaire, whether it's you doing a puzzle. I've got an aunt that loves puzzles. And when family gets together, she goes and has her puzzle time. The idea is habits, right? Outlets are meant to support our sanity. For some people, that is exercise. For some people, that's other things. What Devin does a good job of is she's clear in the things that mean a lot to her, what we like to call those otherish tendencies, the things that are for her, that put her in a good place so that she can then be there for others, right? Her 10-mile run in the morning is what prevents her from choking her brother at the dinner table, just as an example, right? And so sometimes we have to gain clarity on what are those things that I need for me so that I can feel the best and feel connected to who I am. And when you're in connected to people that you have complex emotional relationships with and in environments that can be triggering and nostalgic and all those things, it's important to have those habits or outlets that are yours. And it doesn't have to be a physical one, but it is to say that it should be yours. And that would be my encouragement. So it's not that everyone out here should be trying to run 10 miles unless that is the thing that is yours. And there are some people that there we go, Adriana. Yep. I was just thinking of you with the running. That's fantastic. I love it.
It has prevented many a food fight in my 6-sibling household.
That is an absurd amount of children. I am an only child and an only grandchild, and so I know nothing of these things.
Spoiled.
Spoiled. Not at all, but that's okay. Minor details. We'll unpack that in a therapy session sometime. Other questions, any other things? We're at 8:10, so we are officially 60 minutes from when I got started and said, hear ye, I have something to say.
How can we access the recording?
Good question, Josette. So you hopped in, I think, after I may have said this, but we will be saving this, and then I'll actually be sending that out in the chat. So you can find it there.
Yeah, so we usually send a recap, and then it's worth noting that we post it on our Case Specific Nutrition YouTube channel. And so it's always on that. It's usually a couple days later. So like today's what, Thursday? So I will say by Monday. And then we tend to do an in case you missed it post as well on Instagram. And so if you follow us on all those media platforms, chances are you'll find a link to this situation if you want to listen to it again.
Adriana, all you.
Hi. One thing is don't throw your candy away. There's a bunch of places where you can donate it for soldiers overseas and places like that. So just look that up. Not that I'm saying don't listen to Andrew, but there are ways to use it.
I love that. Remember, I said donate first, but it can be hard to donate.
Right,
so soldiers overseas. There you go. I like that one.
Yes, there you go. And there's like a bunch of gyms and places that collect it. The other thing, for example, right now I'm on a deficit, right? Andrew knows that. So how do you feel about people like me that are on a deficit? Yes, you enjoy the holiday, about banking calories the day before or after the holiday so that like you lower your calories before, you get to enjoy the meal, you eat the cookie, you eat the pie, but you kind of bank those calories before. How do you feel about that?
I hate it.
Really?
I do. And it's because this is the thing. Deficits, that's as you and I have talked about, deficits are the thing that crash and steadily suppress your metabolism. So banking calories is the equivalent of trying to rob the bank, which is to say that you and I have been carefully trying to shortchange the drawer, right? We got a job as a bank teller. We're skimming some pennies out of the drawer. We're getting rid of, we're getting rid of it gradually. The day you bank calories is the day you steal from the actual vault. And guess what? You're getting arrested, girl. And I'm going to have to unpack that on your metabolism on the other side of it. And so eat the freaking food and move the heck on.
Huh. So not even the day before. Okay.
Not a big fan of it. I think it's a good way to set it. It's so popular in terms of how it's practiced, but it ends up not really doing what we need it to do. Like I said, it ends up kind of suppressing metabolism. And then on the other side, it tends to create the language that you said that I don't even think you caught, which is I get to enjoy the meal, as if you weren't allowed to if you didn't do that. And that's that guilt shame cycle we talked about, right? It's that little subtle stuff that our society has just gone nuts with. And so I would much rather you, being a fit female that's running and exercising, have a day that has a surplus, and then use that as fun, rejuvenation, all that stuff, and then go back to skimming your drawer, because that's going to be the metabolic reality that we get to keep. I don't want to get you lighter. I want you living like the healthiest version of you. Doesn't come from starvation. And so I love that question. And that's true for pretty much anybody, runner or not.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I didn't mean starving. I meant eating 200 calories less the day before, not a week. Yeah. But yeah, okay.
Understood. Well, and what I would say, and this is a good comment, is metabolism is something that goes up and down, right? So if we were talking about calories in, calories out as this like mechanical thing, then sure, that might work. But what happens is you eat a little less, your body burns a little less, and then the next day you eat more and your body burns more. And we know that that takes place. And so you get to a point where the amount of hoops you jump through to create this perceived deficit doesn't actually really give you this metabolic payout. We think it kind of comes out in the wash, and it starts to get your body into this state where it adapts to deficits. And so once again, you and I are currently trying to unlock it so that it's a little bit more flexible or more adaptive. And so it's just, you get to a place where you're like, it's not really doing what we want physically, and mentally it's creating a eat this not that kind of paradox, even if it's not extreme. And so I think the mental lag is not worth the physical payout. And you and I have 364 other days that we can talk about, if we're talking about obviously just Thanksgiving.
Right. Yeah. No, just curious because
I love it. No, that was a great question.
Because you have me doing that right now. So,
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's a great question. Again, I think it was a good one for a lot of people. Devin, it looked like you wanted to say something. You had a thought with it.
I always have an opinion. I
Big
will say,
opinion, girl.
if you talk to bodybuilders, when they're in a calorie deficit, they're trying to cut for a show, trying to lose body fat quickly for a show, they will oftentimes sprinkle in a higher calorie day that kind of revs up their metabolism a little bit. That actually helps with a deficit. So that one higher calorie day might actually help with your deficit, rather than if you were to bank it, that tanks it. And so you actually might benefit from that higher calorie day.
yeah, well, that's what Andrew and I are doing kind of right now. So that's why I thought less calories a day before and then higher calorie day on the holiday. But okay.
Yeah. No, I like how you know, I was going to say, I like where your head's at. And again, for you specifically, the idea of the volatility, it's not necessarily the wrong answer, but it's to say you and I on this side, we already have you at your max down. And it's because we don't want to feed you below your BMR. We don't want to create that, because again, there's a point at which your body goes, oh, we're starving. And again, that's not accusing you of starving yourself, but when you feed below that basal metabolic rate, your metabolism starts going, we don't have enough coming in for the body to just exist. And right now in your metabolism, that's going to end up giving us a little bit of a punishing consequence. And so I'd rather see us just have the extra, because we're trying to reverse you up. And so that's more of what I call my personal response to you, on top of the general idea of let's allow the day to be the day. So no, great question.
All right. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else? We're at 8:17. I think we're at a place where we can wrap it. So if you want, Devin, if you want to pause the recording,